Yeah, the call wild's always bringing me home. Call wild's always bringing me home. Call wild's always bringing me
Hello,
home.
wild ones, and welcome back to another episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. I'm so excited to have Kelsey, and then how do you pronounce your last name again?
Schroeder.
Schroeder.
Yeah.
I was almost positive, but I just wanted to make sure that I pronounced it correctly. And your Instagram handle is Kelsey Ceramics.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Glad to be here.
awesome. I love your artwork. It's absolutely beautiful, and I feel like it really resonates with me because I love that you give a little portion back to the World Wildlife Fund, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, part of every sale that I make does go back to the World Wildlife Fund, and then I do monthly giveaways where people can do like raffle style. This year I've been doing a custom mug each month, and all of the proceeds from all of those raffles go to the World Wildlife Fund.
Oh, that's so nice. I really love that. With my clothing brand, I'm trying to do that too. Like, so for $5 of each of my animal designs, I try to give back to a charity that benefits that animal that's on the design. So we definitely align.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
We
great.
definitely, yeah, we definitely align a lot there. So, um, just for people that like don't know you, I guess just to start off on where you began with like your skills, your pottery making, your art.
Sure. So I took my first class in high school, just with my local YMCA. So freshman in high school, I decided to give it a try after my cousin said it might be something I was interested in. And I just immediately fell in love. I was in there as much as I could be. Went on to college and did a degree in fine art ceramics at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And then from there, I did a 2-year residency program at a local ceramic center, also in Cedar Rapids, and used that time just to kind of further my skills, get a little bit more into like the business side of things, focusing on selling my work a little bit more at some local fairs. And then after that, I moved back home to South Dakota with my husband, and I've been saving up money for those couple of years to buy a wheel and a kiln and set up a home studio, and haven't been stopping ever since. So,
Yeah, I mean, just looking at your Instagram, it's like you put out so much, and I like very much respect how much time and how much you really like put like so much effort into like making so many of them too, and they all look absolutely amazing. So
oh, thank you. Yeah,
you're welcome.
it's my full-time job now. I've been full-time doing this for about 2.5 years now. So every day I'm in the studio just making as much as I can, and yeah, trying to highlight, new animals when I can. And yeah, I mean, there's endless inspiration from nature, so there's never any shortage of
Oh
ideas.
yeah, I love that. It's so cool. And like, what's the process like for you when you start making a piece?
Yeah, so everything for me starts on the wheel. So the initial form is always a wheel thrown. Lots of mugs and plates are kind of my usual things, but the last few months I've been working on like some tea sets and some other, more unique items too. But yeah, everything starts on the wheel, and then after I have that initial form, then I start sculpting the individual animals that are going to go on the piece. And as I'm sculpting, I kind of figure out how they're going to work in relation to the initial, mug form or whatever it may be. And then I also want to include like part of the habitat for the animals as part of the overall piece. So I'm also thinking about, how they can interact with the mug as sort of their habitat. So whether that's, building on some branches and leaves, or, glacial ice for a polar bear, or whatever it may be. And
So cool.
yeah, so and then after everything is sculpted, it dries for a while, it goes through a first firing, and then after that I do all the glazing on it and another firing, and it's good to go.
Now I know that clay can sometimes be tricky. Do you ever do you ever lose pieces when you put it in the kiln?
Not usually in the kiln. Usually when something fails, it's more like while I'm working on it. I've had things where, I push something too hard and I snap the mug in half or, things like that. But
Okay.
in the kiln itself, I don't have too many casualties. The biggest kind of risky area for me is usually in the glazing. And usually I like to use a lot of like really fluid glazes. So they give a lot of, kind of movement and a lot of like flowing colors, that sort of thing. But because of that, they tend to be really runny. So sometimes if they're applied a bit too thick or the kiln gets a bit too hot or some things like that, then it can kind of run off the bottom of the piece. And then I have to kind of grind it down a little bit and do some finishing up. But usually I can still salvage it in some way. So not too often that I completely lose a piece, but clay definitely
Okay.
takes a lot of, practice. There's a lot of, finesse to the drying times. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of steps along the way where something could go wrong. But I think
Right.
after 20 years, you figure out a lot of those tricks. So.
Right. Yeah. And it's cool that you went to school specifically for that. So I'm sure that they teach you lots of those tricks and everything while you're there as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, I mean, a lot of it is just trial and error, figuring out what works and what doesn't work and trying new techniques and just, there's always new skills to hone with that. So.
That's awesome. And then I saw that you also make molds for some of your things, like the ornaments. How do
Yeah,
you, how's that process like to make the molds?
yeah. So, not everything, can be molded, just the nature of kind of the three dimensions of it. But like for the ornaments, I'm sculpting little like animal busts so I can make those a little more of a kind of, relief form. So I do the initial sculpting, with the clay, just like I would for anything else. And then I put it through the first firing. So after that, it's then hard. It's no longer like water soluble. So, um, it's going to hold up to the mold making. And I apply like a sealant to it. And then I just have like a um, silicone mold making solution that I use. So I can pour it over that original and then you let it sit for a few hours. It sets up. And then I can kind of cut my original out of the silicone. And then I have this nice flexible mold that can work well with the clay. So it can be a little bit speedier with some of the sculpting on that. So.
Right. That's amazing too. Yeah, because I was very interested in that. I would love to try to and I'm sorry, I sound a little nasally. I'm definitely getting a little cold or something, but
That's okay.
um but I love the idea that like at least to make it a little bit easier for you because clay takes so much work to be able to mold and to do it. So I guess any little thing that you can have as on your arsenal, right, to help you put through as many as you can is
Yeah,
probably
for sure.
yeah.
I mean, when I'm sculpting the initial, like original for those ornaments, each one can take me, maybe 45 minutes to an hour versus when it comes out of a mold, I can have, it done within a few minutes. So, I mean, it
Amazing.
saves a lot of time, especially with those particular ones.
Yeah. And I feel like that's nice because you're trying to get as many pieces out there. I know so many people want want one of your pieces because they're so magical and beautiful and unique as well. How many pieces do you usually try to put out, I guess? And you do different like uploads, right, to your site for whenever you're done with
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I usually have an update to my online shop about once a month. Um, And each month I do kind of a different collection that has, a theme of some kind. Sometimes it's, a certain ecosystem or a certain, type of animal or whatever it may be. Um, and on average, I make probably about like 25, maybe 30 mugs in a month. And then, 10 to 15 like little trinket plates is kind of the typical assortment for one of my like monthly updates. Right now I'm getting ready for my big holiday update, so I'm making a lot of extra things. I just finished the last of the ornaments, at least making them, and I have just about 200 of them. So I've been
Wow.
making those just day and night, lots of long days trying to get all those done. Because yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are especially excited, to shop in this kind of big drive that I have coming up. So
Yeah, I love this particular one, the combining of like the Christmas season with the wild animals, like the giraffe and the raccoon. Very, very cute. I love that one. My son's favorite animal is a giraffe too. So um yeah, I really like that one. That one's so cute.
yeah, they're really fun. And
Um,
the ornaments are, yeah, there's something where, I can get a little more like playful with them, on the mugs and things. I tend to go more realistic, trying to capture how the animal would really be, in its real life
right.
habitat. But for the ornaments, they have scarves and candy canes and all sorts of fun things. So I can really kind of let my imagination go and make them just really fun and festive and cute for the tree.
I love that. What's been some of like your, I know it's probably very hard to pick, but like what's some of your favorite designs that you've done for your work?
Oh, yeah, it's so hard. I have lots of them. I always love doing like ocean inspired pieces. Those, especially with like coral reefs and things like that, there's so much opportunity for bright colors and just a wide variety of, habitats for, species within that habitat to do. So those are always really fun. Um, but I also, this year, I did a lot more like rainforest pieces than I've ever done before. And I really love those because, again, just with all the like foliage and flowers and fruits, and I mean, it just was a lot of fun just to add in so many like tiny details, again, to really like bring the animal into a home, on its little piece. Yeah, so the
Yeah.
rainforest ones have been really fun this year. But yeah, anytime I get to kind of explore something new, that's kind of my current favorite in the moment is
I
whatever
love that.
new thing I'm working on. But yeah, I definitely have some kind of tried and true favorites that I like to go back to.
Yeah, both of those definitely sound like, especially because you bring the environment into your work, like definitely have a lot of inspiration for, like you said, like the coral and the fish, and then the rainforest with all the different plants and other little animals. It's so cool. Um, what like when you like start to like, what's your research process like, or do you kind of just like look at it as you go, or how does that fit for you?
Yeah, so a lot of times I have like a big Pinterest board that's separated out by different like ecosystems or, big cats, birds, whatever it may be. So I have a lot of like photo references that I'm going off of. Um, One, just to get, the sculpting of the animal right, so it really does look like that animal. But also, I go through a lot of pictures to kind of get a sense of, how they interact with their environment. I want them to be posed on the mug in a way that's natural and feels like it, kind of captures a little moment of their personality. So I also love watching lots of like nature documentaries. I mean, any of those like BBC production. I mean, I can watch those on an endless loop for hours and hours. But yeah, seeing, the animals in motion that way, again, to kind of get a sense of their personality, how they might interact then with the mug. And so from there, once I have, some of those initial ideas, I have kind of a mental vision of what the final outcome will be. So then I can start kind of sculpting and playing with it from there. But yeah, so lots of pictures, lots of nature documentaries, and lots of suggestions from my followers too. I usually, when I'm ready to start the next collection, I'll, put a post up in Instagram and whatnot saying, hey, rainforest is going to be next. What do you want to see? Because a lot of times I get suggestions for animals I wouldn't have thought of or maybe have never even heard of sometimes. And So that's always fun when I can find a new animal, do some research, find out more about them, what makes them special, and then try to bring them to life.
I love that. Do you leave the documentaries on while you're while you're working, or do you like to just be quiet while you're working?
I usually have more like music or like podcasts playing most of the time. If I have like a show on, I'm more likely to get distracted and not get as much
Fair.
done. So if I have something that I'm just listening to, but also I found like especially while I'm sculpting, there's so much kind of mental energy into like figuring out, what looks right, what doesn't look right, figuring out all of that kind of stuff. And so if I have something too engaging going on in the background, then it's harder for me to focus on that. So those times I more have just kind of like some background music. But then sometimes when I'm doing more of the kind of tedious work, just like putting handles on or trimming or that sort of thing, I'll have, like a nature show going and get some
Yeah.
extra information.
Yeah, that's more like more of like a assembly line, right? So you could kind of be more willing to be distracted in that sense than opposed to the more intricate sculpting of the little animals and everything.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
You've done so many different animals and landscapes and stuff. What would be something that you're looking forward to hopefully doing maybe next or in the future?
Yeah. So one thing I haven't done a ton of so far, are like deep ocean creatures. I did just a couple, earlier this year, maybe it was last year, I can't keep track anymore, but, I did one mug in particular that was like a deep ocean, like sea vents, with the kind of, boiling water coming out of the vents. And I mean, there's so many just really cool, unique creatures that live down there. And, this year I've read a couple of books that have just gotten me extra inspired about that habitat and how little we know about it, but also how like important it is for, just the health of the whole planet. So I'm definitely excited to play with that a little bit more. I'm also going to finally get around to another Africa collection. I intended to do that at some point this year, and then other ideas just kept kind of taking over from there. But I know that there's a lot more that I'd like to explore with African animals. It's just been sitting on my to-do list too long. So that one's going to be early next
Yeah.
year for sure.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like with creativity, right, is like sometimes you have an idea for something, but then something else busts through and is like, oh wait, no, I need to work on that first. And then, eventually you'll get around to to finding a way to get back to that original idea that you had. So creativity's kind of interesting like that too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Every month I make kind of a long list of everything that I'm inspired by, everything that I want to fit into that collection. And by the end of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I did like a third of the ideas that I was hoping to get to.
Yeah.
And so I always have to kind of go back through my notebook and see and past things, what did I plan to do and didn't get back to, and see if there's a way I can kind of circle back to it in a different collection. Because, sometimes you just get on a roll with something and it's the way to go and you just kind of plow forward. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's more ideas than I can physically get to in a given amount of time.
Right, realistically, yeah. And especially with like what you do, it's so intricate and detailed that your time is really limited to like what you can actually physically accomplish. So that's definitely another, I'm sure, thing that you have to work around and through.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. It's it's just me making everything start to finish. And so, as much as there's all these things I want to get to, I do have to remind myself, like, I'm only one person. There's only so many hours in the day. I still have to clean my house
right.
and pay attention to my children and, those kind of essential
Right.
things. So,
Yeah. How I remember seeing one of your stories that I really loved. How old are your children again?
they're in third and fourth grade. So my son is almost 10 and my daughter is 8.
That's awesome. And your daughter is kind of doing some clay work as well with you?
She's little Miss Artist. Anything,
Oh,
I mean, she constantly has projects all around the house. She's a mini me, 100%, that's for sure. Her latest thing is this summer she learned how to crochet. And so I mean, she gets in bed at night and she's just crocheting everything until it's late. We have to remind her to go to sleep. You can crochet more tomorrow. And yeah,
oh,
so she loves to work in the studio with me when she can. Painting, drawing, I mean, anything
and
she can get on her hands on. She's
that's so cute. I love the one story that you posted, and I don't know, I think this was at like a market or something you were at, and like your daughter had a couple pieces and like talking about the price of one, and then her having the confidence to be like, no, I put in a lot of work into this. Like that
yeah.
has to be the price. I like, if you want to like maybe like elaborate a little bit more, I'm sure I'm obviously missing some pieces, but I really love that.
Yeah. So she, over the summer and everything had been making all these little crochet pieces and she calls them pot pouches. And it's more or less like a little coaster, but then kind of comes up on the side. So, it's kind of a little
That's
hotbed,
cute.
whatever you want it to be. But she was so excited to be making all these pot pouches. So I was getting ready for an upcoming um, art festival, and so she asked if she could sell some things at my booth too. I was like, yeah, sure. So I expected she was going to have maybe like 10 of these little pot pouches, and she started pulling them out. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many do you have? She's like, I've got 30 of them. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we're finding like space to put them all in my booth and a little basket for her and everything. And anyway, so on the drive over to the festival, my kids are talking in the back, and um, we asked her, so how much are you gonna sell your pot pouches for? And she said, I think they should be $10. And my son was like, I feel like that's a lot. You're only 8 and you just started, and I just don't know if you should be charging that much. And I mean, without missing a single beat, she just said, no, I put a lot of work into these and each one is really special. And so they're worth $10. And I just was like, yes, I mean, we all need that confidence to not settle for what our work is really worth. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that will say, oh, this is too expensive, and whatnot. So sometimes it's easy to get kind of beaten down by that. And yeah, I mean, she was just so confident and so sure of herself. Like, no, these are special and they're worth it. And I'm going to charge what I'm going to charge. And she sold a few of them. So that was just, yeah, even more exciting for her. So
Oh, I'm so glad that she sold some too, and you must have been such a proud mama for uh like I feel like those are kind of like, especially for, I have a son that's 3, so he's not kind of like up there yet, but with like making things or anything like that, but just like I feel like you must have been so proud to like have like that's like a one of those memory bank kind of moments, like, oh, I'm gonna remember that, like how proud.
absolutely. Yeah, it was one of those things that, because I've never talked to her about how she should price things or, pricing strategy as an artist or anything like that. And I don't know, maybe she's overheard conversations I've had with my husband about something like that. I don't know. But yeah, it was just like, yes, you are on the right track. And yeah, never settle for what you know that you're worth. And yeah, oh my gosh, I was so proud of her. And yeah, I wrote down the whole story in my phone so I could just reference that back when I need a reminder of that. And yeah, I'm so proud of her. It was really sweet.
I think it's so cool that our children can like reflect back lessons to us that we need to have to like remind ourselves. Like I think especially with like your work and it being handmade, that I feel like a lot of the times I'm sure you get like questioned about your prices and things, but the fact that especially with clay, it's there's so many different processes. You got to start on the wheel, you have to actually mold it, then you have to put it in the kiln, right? And then you have to take it back out and then refine, like, so painting it, adding, if you're going to add a handle or something else or another animal, like there is a lot of work that goes into each piece. So like I think like just respecting artists now and like their time, I think is a huge valuable piece of, like what we should focus on too. And like, maybe people should take a step back before being like, oh, that's really expensive, to be like, well, look at how much time I put and effort and everything into this art.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, there's so many artists that are making, just beautiful things. And it's not just the, time and the physicality of it, but it's the emotional energy that's put into a handmade piece. I have so many people that say, like, it feels different when you're drinking your coffee from a handmade mug. Like, that someone put their time and their soul and their energy into this. It's not just some, mass produced, not very well made thing you're going to find at a department store, sort of thing. That mug is gorgeous, by the way, that you're drinking from. That's so cool.
Speaking of, I did get this mug from Anthropology, but yeah, I do really love this. It's like the unicorn toile. So
Very cool. Yeah. But
but I
yeah, I
just
mean,
yeah.
there's something to be said for, that energy and that effort that's put into a piece, and whether it's a painting or a sculpture or piece of pottery or whatever it is, there's definitely, I don't know, I definitely feel the energy that comes out of that. And when I'm able to surround myself with those things, and yeah, so it's something that I appreciate and that, I'm willing to pay for, and other people with that same, viewpoint are going to be willing to pay for too. And, that does mean that there's some people that maybe can't always afford your work, but if they know it's worth it, it's something they're going to save up for, and, know that
Yeah.
what you've put into it is worth that. And there's always going to be those people that, like, I can get a $5 mug from Target or whatever, so I'm not going to spend that kind of money on one of yours. But, that's not the customer that you're looking for anyways. And so sometimes that's hard to
Exactly.
kind of roll off your shoulders. But I found that most of the time when you're able to, take a moment to explain to people like what really goes into each piece, and mine are sometimes more obvious than, a regular mug, so to speak, just because you can clearly see the extra sculpting and whatnot that's on there. But even, a potter that's making a more basic handmade mug is still put, years into that practice, hours of glaze experimentation and kiln loads that failed, and, all that kind of stuff that, it's worth supporting them in that. So
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like looking at your pieces, I think I'm always just like really amazed at like because you can tell all of the work that goes into each piece. And I think again, especially with clay, how many different processes there are just for one piece, which is really cool. And I think it's nice that it's actually a piece of art that you could use, not every piece of art out there is, sometimes it's for a wall or whatever it is, but there is something to be said for it being very cool that you can actually physically use your items too.
yeah, for sure. And it's, I have a number of, my own mugs that I've kept over the years, and I found it's really fun, when you hold one of them, depending like where the animal is placed, like you kind of interact with that animal too, whether it's kind of the direction of their head, so they're kind of looking at you when you take a sip of your coffee, or some of them, your thumb kind of rests against their back, and so you're almost like petting them as you're holding your mug, or that sort of thing. So it's really fun to, get to actually use it and interact with it in that way. So yeah, I mean, it's fun to create pieces that people are using, and they're not just necessarily sitting on a shelf, to look
Yeah.
pretty, but they're getting that daily, kind of tactile attention, because, that's what pottery is made for. So
Yeah. Hi, Wild Ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is sponsored by my clothing brand, Femme Sauvage, and you can find a discount code and link in the description. So check it out. We have a lot of amazing designs, and $5 of the proceeds goes to different charities. So please feel free to check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much. I was gonna ask you too, like, so you've definitely kept some pieces. Are there like some pieces you make and you're like, I just can't give this one up. This one's too much aligned with me.
Yep, yeah, for sure. There's, sometimes when I'm like actually making and sculpting on them, some little detail will come out. I'm like, ooh, this one's going to be hard to part with. And other times, it's a surprise that comes out of the kiln that the glaze dripped in just this particular way or something. Like, no, that just feels too special. I can't part with it. So I don't have very often that I go out making something with the intention to keep it. I usually end up keeping ones that have a little extra magic, to me for some reason that I feel like I can't duplicate that again, because most of the time I'm like, okay, I really like this puffin or whatever, but I can make more puffins. You don't have to keep every single animal that comes out of the kiln. But sometimes like, oh,
Right.
little foot and the glaze kind of puddled around it just so, or, whatever it might be. Like, no, I can't part with that one. So I definitely have multiple cupboards full of mugs, as you might imagine, from me and from other buyers too. So
Yeah. How many pieces, or like how often would you say that like it so happens that you keep a piece from whatever collection you're, or like whatever batches you're putting out?
it's not super often. I mean,
Yeah.
I maybe keep a couple over the course of a year. I also have my husband reminding me that I can't keep everything that comes out of the kiln, so he's a good kind of voice of reason. Like, is it really superstition, or do you just really like this collection? So he's good at kind of keeping me in line. And okay, do we have more space in the cupboard to fit that? And but yeah, so and most of the time I am able, to let go of them. And every once in a while I'll hang on to a particular piece for a little bit and it's like, do I for sure need to keep it? And, there's sometimes where I'm just not quite sure if I can let it go, but if I let a little bit of time pass, then I realize,
Then,
okay, it's okay to let that one go. So,
yeah.
yeah, I try and rein myself in, but it's definitely hard sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I used to paint a lot more when I was younger, but I only made the pieces for myself. I feel like there was never, it was very hard to like let go of those pieces, and I feel like especially when you're like you're super inspired and you're very into what you're doing, and like, oh, that came out so cool. I'm sure that's like really hard, and I feel like that's like another piece of artistry that's like not talked about as much as like, oh, okay, we got to let this piece go, and like at least it's going to somebody that really loves and enjoys it too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I get plenty of, messages and sometimes like pictures of, mugs in their new homes, or, people will send me a message about, what spoke to them about that particular piece. And that always makes me so happy when I can see the connection that someone else, has to, that particular animal or whatever it might be about that piece. So knowing that they're going to, good, happy homes, yeah, definitely makes it a little bit easier to part with them. And, I have to pay my bills every month. So ultimately, I do have to find
That's a
some
good
way I
push.
can part with them. So, yeah,
That's a good push.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Like, oh, yeah, that extra bill this month. Okay, I really can't justify keeping another mug. That would pay the electric bill. So, yeah, gotta let that one go.
Yeah, 100%. And you have your own home studio, right? So
Yeah,
that's really nice.
yeah,
I'm sure it's where like is it like when you have a home studio, is that something that has to be more like in a garage, or like the actual like machinery that you need? Like what kind of goes behind that?
Yeah, so my main studio is just a spare bedroom in the house. So that's where I have my wheel, my table where I do all the sculpting at. I also have my like glaze setup in there. So pretty much everything I do is just in this spare bedroom. But I do have the kiln out in the garage. You can have a kiln inside, but as it's firing, there are different like fumes and things that are put out. So I have like a vent system on the kiln, so it still vents like outside of the house and not just in the garage. But it's definitely easier to have the kiln not directly in like a living space.
Right.
But the rest of it is more just a matter of kind of keeping the clay dust on the inside of the studio and not migrating through the rest of the house.
Right.
But yeah, so just a spare bedroom, and yeah, that's where it all happened.
That's cool. That's inspiring too, is like, you don't need like a super like big amount of space. Like you just have, like you're making it work for you, which is awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and I
Um,
mean, my style of work, I don't, depending on the type of work you're making, I'm not making like big, like slip cast molds or something where I need a lot of storage space for, equipment or that kind of tools and whatnot. Most of my stuff is pretty small, so I can fit it, into a pretty small area and just make it efficient, make it work for me. And yeah, so far so good.
yeah. And what are the pieces that you have? So I know you obviously have like mugs and the trinket dishes and the ornaments, but what else is a part of your repertoire that you make?
Yeah, so those are definitely the main things, but I do like to make some like larger plates periodically. That's been really fun just to explore kind of on a larger scale. I'm able to fit, more of a scene or sculpt an animal on a larger scale so I can get like more detail and that sort of thing with it. So I do like to do some of those kind of larger sculptural pieces. This year I am doing tea sets, so I've made the first teapots that I've made in probably 12 years or so. So that was kind of fun to revisit that. And so each set I made the teapot itself, two teacups, and two little saucers for them. And I was able to then kind of explore ways to get kind of the theme of the whole tea set, um, to be cohesive together, but different for each piece. I did, like a coral reef one that is going to be ready to glaze. And so like one cup has a little seal on it, another cup has, I think I did a turtle, and then, the little saucers have a little bit of like a coral reef scene. So those have been really fun to do kind of a bigger scale. But coming into this next year, I'm going to start playing with a lot more different forms. I'm going to do some more like lidded jars, and I've had requests for like sugar dishes and soap dispensers or things like that. So I'm going to start to play with some more forms from there and just kind of see what comes out of it.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I feel like a sugar dish would be very cute too. I could see how creatively that could be a lot of fun too. And I'm sure there's a lot of like I'm sure that would really spark your creativity with like, you know, with different vessels, how you have to move the animals and like the nature around the piece too.
Yeah, definitely. Because when, I first started doing these, my initial thought was, okay, we'll make a mug because the handle gives just an easy, point for an animal to sit. And then the more I've kept exploring with them and realized the more I elaborate I can get with them and the more that the animals, I can put them on the side and kind of build the environment up around them. That's opened up ways that I can do, vases and bottles. And I mean, even just the little trinket dishes and starting to do plates, it changes your perspective on how the animal can sit. And so now I have this kind of flat plane with a lot of space to work off of instead of, just that little resting point on the handle and trying to kind of manipulate from there. So yeah, every time that I do, a new form, it definitely opens up a lot of doors and ways to just keep being creative with it and
Yeah.
find new ways to, keep it fun.
Yeah. I love the trinket dishes too. I feel like another piece, I don't know if you have already, but like that I feel like sometimes are pretty popular, are, like the ring holders
Yeah,
too. Like, I feel like
yeah,
you could get very creative with that too.
for sure. Yeah, actually, that's a request that I've had a few people say recently that they want. Yeah, a trinket dish with a little like ring holder of some kind. So last month I was doing kind of like nocturnal and fall forest animals. So I did a few, like a squirrel kind of with its tail up, so you could put rings on his tail, and just some initial kind of ideas to start with. But I can see, I mean, lots of tails is an easy way to do that, but even,
Yeah.
tree stumps or coral or, there's a lot of ideas that I have kind of cooking to do some ring dishes. Yeah, it seems like that's a big request that's brewing out there.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very excited for you because I feel like again like the creativity too, like you said, like, oh, this is a flat space. So to think of the environment in that way, or how can I incorporate it in that way as opposed to vertically where you have to attach, things in a different way too. It's amazing how creativity can turn and be used, and especially when you're really interested in your subject, and nature is kind of like the perfect uh avenue for that. There, like you said, there's really an unlimited source of like inspiration that comes from nature too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm always seeing a new animal or a new habitat or whatever. And sometimes, it seems obvious, like, oh, that would be perfect for a trinket plate. And sometimes it's more conducive for a mug or something in between that I have yet to figure out. So, yeah, it's always fun to just keep playing and keep being creative. And one idea that works just sparks more ideas. And I mean, that's how we keep moving forward in what we make.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to get one of your pieces because I've been following you for a little while, and I just love like animals and nature in general, and I think that's what makes your pieces so unique and cool, and the artwork that, like, the amount of work that you put behind it too. So I'm definitely looking forward for your next drop to try to see if I can snag something. So
Thank
um
you.
you're welcome. So when you do drop the items, how quickly do you see them usually go?
The first ones sell like in seconds. I honestly don't know how people sell
Wow.
out that fast. It's crazy. I'm getting, order notifications within like 15, 20 seconds of me like posting their live. And so most of the time in the monthly ones, like I would say probably about 80% of the pieces are sold within the first like 5 minutes or so. And most of the time, they're all sold for sure within 24 hours. There's always, a couple of pieces that kind of linger afterward, but usually there's someone, you know, that notices a little late and they swoop in and snag those. So, yeah, they go
Yeah.
really quick for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to like build like your platform where you got to the point that you're able to amazingly sell these out in like seconds?
Yeah, so when I first started making these, I set up just like an Etsy shop and put them in there and found they were, selling pretty quickly. And just because, I have these kind of scheduled drops where everything is released, I found that it ended up working better to create my own website for that. It could just keep up with the traffic of kind of everyone coming to my shop all at once easier. So, so I set up my online store from there, but really, most of the traffic I get is from my social media. And so a lot of that is really just, you know, constantly posting and trying to keep people engaged. And like I said, I try to get a lot of feedback from people. What are they looking for in this next collection? So I can kind of gauge what demand is out there for certain things. And so, that took some time to kind of figure out the ins and outs of that. But this particular, because before I started making all these pieces with the animals, and I still do make, regular mugs and things, so to speak. And that's what I sell at like my local fairs and stuff. And those sell well, but once I started making the animal pieces and posting them just, in some clay groups on Facebook and things like that, I mean, the response was just instantly so huge that people loved them and connected to them. So I realized that was the direction I should really focus on moving my work toward. So I mean, they're things that have always just sold really well from the get-go, so I haven't had to do a lot to try to get people like to want these things and to find these things. So it's more just my social media, trying to find new ways to keep people engaged and gaining some attention, and then reminding them when those shop updates are. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the pieces definitely speak for themselves. So I could definitely see that they like really resonate with people because they're just so unique and amazing. What has been like the hardest animal that you've probably had to sculpt or try to add to one of your collections?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let me think. I recently did a nightjar, which is a kind of bird. Some people call them dragon birds. They just have this very
I saw
distinctive
that.
look
Yeah.
to them. And it was one that now that I've figured it out the first time, I know the next one would go a lot quicker. But anytime that I'm sculpting an animal for the first time, there's just a bigger learning curve to it to kind of get, all the proportions right. And, especially because I'm usually going off of just a picture or a couple of pictures. So sometimes it's kind of hard to get a sense of, okay, what do they look like in profile? What do they look like straight on? So that when they're sculpted in 3D, they resonate as that animal, from every angle. So each new one is always a challenge. But I think this year, I did a collection of like Australian and New Zealand animals earlier this year, and I swear, like all of them were so hard. I was so just like mentally exhausted by the end of that collection. And it was just kind of weird because I think partly because a lot of those animals are so iconic. You think of a koala and everyone instantly knows what a koala looks like. And so if you get something just a little bit off, they just look a little wonky and they just don't feel right. But then at the same time, because I don't have as much like direct interaction with those animals, North American animals or things like, tigers or whatever that you see a lot, it was easier for me to have a sense of how does that work. If I've sculpted a house cat, I can get a tiger figured out because they're similar enough. But so many animals there are just weird in these unique ways. So, like the proportions of a koala's face, I would feel like it would look really good in profile, but then I turn it from the front. I'm like, why are his eyes there? Like, that's not where they are. And yeah, I don't know. So that was overall the collection that was the hardest for me because I felt like I really had to do them justice because they are so iconic.
Right.
But they're just kind of hard and weird. So yeah, I was glad to move on from that collection.
Yeah.
I loved all of them in the end. And like I got there, but I felt like every single one that I was sculpting was just hard and hard and hard. Whereas usually, if I'm doing a collection of things like, okay, that one particular bird was kind of tricky, but then all the other birds were fine and they all came together. So
yeah. I could see how that could be very hard to try to get something from a picture and then you're trying to add it in 3D or like make it obviously in 3D. So, um, I really appreciate more talking to you about the intricacies that uh go into each piece too, and not just behind the actual, it's like the inspiration behind it and then how to translate it properly too.
Yeah.
Um is
Yeah.
another, yeah.
Well, and there's something like, last month I did raccoons and I was looking at them, and anytime the animals have like ticking in their fur where, their fur like changes color throughout like each
Mhm.
individual strand, makes it so hard to make them from clay. I'm not making individual hairs. And so
Right.
you look at something like a raccoon and they have this kind of like base of brown, but then moves into gray and has almost like white tips to the fur. And so I was looking at some pictures and they're kind of brown and some they're gray. And it's like I can't decide what color they're even supposed to be. And I was mixing up all these new colors, like that doesn't look right, that doesn't look right. If I layer these two, does it look right? And I finally ended up putting a poll on Instagram and just said, all right, guys, are raccoons gray or are they brown? And the resounding answer was gray. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go in the direction of gray with hints of brown. And that seems to be it.
Yeah.
So it's funny sometimes just the little things that you don't really think of until you're trying, to render that particular animal and get the color
Yeah.
right and get the, way they move or their little paws or, whatever it may be. There's, just a
Yeah.
lot that has to come together for it to work in the end.
Absolutely. I have a raccoon design that I had that I'm going to launch soon, but uh definitely when I was looking at like the reference pictures, I can 100% relate to that. It's like it really changes colors like from gray to brown to like white gray. Like there's a lot of it, like, and thankfully I do like my art is on my iPad and then I upload it so I can really work around that. But with, like you're saying, with clay, it's like you're not drawing the individual hairs, so you really got to work off of mostly one color. It's not like you can just add stuff on there. So I'm glad that you got the poll out there and most people thought it was gray.
Yeah, yeah, because even, sometimes I'm looking at, multiple reference photos, but they're not necessarily the same individual animal. And so I'm looking at, this tiger has a lot of stripes on his face and this one doesn't. So this particular one I'm sculpting, should he have a lot of stripes or a little bit of stripes or split the difference or, so yeah, there's always something to kind of figure it out to make it work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Kelsey, this I think is a good spot to wrap up. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. I know you're very busy with making everything and with your family and your home. So thank you so much for being here. And just to let everybody know where they can find you and if they would like to buy a piece, all the details of that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to chat and to get to know you a little bit and get to share about my work. And the main place to find me is just Instagram at Kelsey Ceramics. And then my website with my shop and everything is KS Wildlife Creations, and the link for that's on my Instagram too.
Cool. And I'll make sure to plug that at the end of this video. And I'll put some of your work at the ends because I'm not technologically savvy where I could add some of your work in. So I'll make sure to add it at the end so people, when they're done listening to this, can at least see some of your beautiful work and can go and follow you. So thank you so much again. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah, the call of the wild's always bringing me home. Call of the wild's always bringing me home. Call of the wild's always bringing me home. So like a wild tigress, I'll continue to roar, because there's nothing that I need to fear anymore. Yeah. Inside of every brother and sister.